My interview with Senator Ron Wyden was recorded before the news that David Weiss has been appointed as special prosecutor in the Hunter Biden investigation. We'll ask Senator Merkley about it in the second half of this program. Here's my interview with Senator Wyden. Oregon senior U.S. Senator Ron Wyden is back in the state, holding town halls in Tigard and Hood River next week and launching his Oregon Bounty program to promote Oregon agricultural products internationally. Senator Wyden is chair of the Senate Finance Committee. He's on the Budget Committee, vice chair of the Joint Committee on Taxation, as well as the Senate Intelligence and Energy Committees. Senator Wyden is the dean of Oregon's congressional delegation. Senator Wyden, welcome back to Eye on Northwest Politics.
Hey, thanks for having me, Ken.
Well, let's start with the news out of Washington, D.C. What's your take on the indictments against former President Donald Trump?
Ken, it just seems to me you start with the proposition that the rule of law applies to everybody. And every single day, juries are standing for that principle. And the former president is going to see that juries are going to apply it to him.
What do you think about the fact that it seems like every time there's a new indictment or a new legal challenge, his popularity, especially among his Republican base, seems to increase?
As much as any elected official, the former president has been masterful at just feeding his political base. He plays to their anger. He plays to their frustration. I'm not surprised that they continue to support him.
The Fitch rating service just downgraded the U.S. credit rating from the highest AAA rating to AA plus, one level below. What did you think of that, and what effect do you think that will have?
Well, first of all, what they're doing apparently is basing that on some notion that there will be perpetual disharmony in public life, that you won't have any effort, for example, to have Democrats and Republicans come together on a budget early this fall. The new fiscal year starts October 1st. I don't share that view. My job is to try to stand up for principles, try to stand up for common ground. I wasn't satisfied with everything in the debt ceiling legislation, but if we hadn't passed it, it would have put Social Security and Medicare at risk.
And how will this downgrading of the credit rating, what practical impact does that have?
Well, obviously, you want the highest possible credit rating, but it seems to me that people are also looking at some really dramatic progress. You look at the unemployment rate, it's the lowest it's been in a long time. Those kinds of numbers are going to stand for something, too.
Do you think that the Fed should continue to raise interest rates to control inflation?
I think the Fed ought to be very cautious with respect to raising interest rates. I mean, clearly, we've made a lot of progress, but we've got a long way to go. We're still coming out of COVID. We got supply chain issues, and I think they ought to be very cautious with respect to raising rates.
The Justice Department is suing Texas for putting its own barriers on the southern border. What can Congress do to get a handle on the crisis at the border, and what do you think about what the state of Texas is doing?
Well, obviously, Texas doesn't want to go along with national judgments with respect to national issues. Personally, I was in favor of the George W. Bush and Ted Kennedy compromise in terms of trying to deal with the border issues. Obviously, you've got to have controls on the borders. I voted for vast sums for technology and enforcement. But I also think that we ought to have, as part of a long-term solution, a path to citizenship.
And what would that path look like? How would that be organized or be different from what we've got in place right now?
Well, we're not even looking at such a thing right now. What we're focused on, and it's appropriate, is beefing up enforcement. But a longer-term solution, along the lines of a bipartisan solution that I've been for, would look also to making sure that if you had an individual who's been undocumented, been in the country, has not committed any other offenses, mastered English, they ought to have a chance to be able to go into the citizenship line.
Have you been pleased to see that we've managed to at least reduce the flow of migrants across the border?
Yes. There's a lot more to do. For example, much of the flow into this country stems from the fact that these other nations have economic, issues. And I look, for example, at Cuba. I mean, if we did nothing else other than trying to make it possible for Cuban entrepreneurs to get access to bank accounts here, that would stop the flow from Cuba.
Let's talk about something that really affects this state. We've got a serious fentanyl crisis in the state of Oregon. In many ways, some people say it's related to the border crisis that we just talked about. So you're urging the feds to crack down on the flow of fentanyl. In what way?
Well, particularly focused on I-84 and I-5. That's a big part of the flood that we're dealing with. The Finance Committee has jurisdiction over the customs offices. I brought them in, asked them what else they're going to do to beef up our efforts to protect our state. I was also, as you noted, having community meetings across the state. I was in Coos Bay. I met with the sheriff there. He would like to have his area designated a high-density drug trafficking area. That would make a big difference in terms of fighting those drugs there.
When you're in Washington, D.C., and you hear about what we're going through in terms of the drug crisis, the fentanyl crisis, just from a personal standpoint, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, as a Portlander, I'm not satisfied. I think it's been too long without any real solutions. And certainly very substantial funds have been made available, federal funds, state funds, and I think it's important to put them to better use.
Russia and China are exploring more military cooperation. We've seen some meetings, we've seen some activity, including joint maneuvers off the coast of Alaska. How much does that concern you?
Well, I'm on the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, Ken, so I can't get into specifics about it, but of course I'm concerned. I mean, when you see the prospects of Russia and China teaming up, you say, what are we going to do in terms of their actions relative to our national security? So, of course, you have to be concerned, and I just can't go further since I'm on the Intelligence Committee.
Okay. Let's talk about prescription drug prices. You've called for a reduction in prescription drug prices. What have you done so far, you as in Congress, and where do we have to go from here?
Well, one of the areas I'm very pleased about is my legislation to, in effect, have a price gouging penalty has just gone into effect. And what that deals with is if drug companies are raising their prices more than inflation, particularly for some of these older drugs, they would have to pay a penalty to Medicare in order to reduce cost sharing for Oregon's senior citizens. And you look, for example, at a drug like Humira, which is the breakthrough arthritis drug. This is really going to help folks who depend on affordable medicine for those kinds of drugs.
You were with Health and Human Services Secretary Xavier Becerra in Portland this week, talking about legislation that reforms the U.S. organ donor system. What's the issue here, and what does the legislation do?
Well, it will shortly be law, and I'm very proud of it. We had very significant bipartisan support. Senators like Charles Grassley, Republican of Iowa, and I worked very much together because the system has been broken. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of people on these waiting lists, Ken. And this is urgent business. This is life-saving kind of business. Those were the kind of cases that we heard about with the secretary in town. And the current system just doesn't have accountability and transparency. And you've had one operation essentially control everything. Our investigation on the Finance Committee found, for example, organs lying around in airport hangars. And it was just unacceptable, and our law is going to fix that.
We got about 30 seconds here, and I know that you've been really interested in Oregon being able to get a WNBA team. Where does that stand, and what are your thoughts about that?
I believe we're making good progress. I spend a fair amount of time talking to people who are knowledgeable about the league and close to the way these decisions get made. I'm very much encouraged. As you know, we brought Kathy Engelbert, the commissioner of the WNBA, out here. She was just stunned at the grassroots support. In effect, you had the Ducks and the Beavers right next to each other. And let's put it this way. I think we've made real progress. I'm hopeful, and I think we'll know sooner rather than later.
Senator Wyden, thank you for being on Eye on Northwest Politics.
Thanks for having me.